Adam Whitmore had never believed in fate. His life was built on logic, control, and calculated decisions. But as he stood in front of Rachel's gravestone, the crisp autumn air pressing against his skin, he realized that some moments defied explanation. He had come to say goodbye to a past he thought was long buried, but instead, he found two little girls with tear-streaked faces and piercing blue eyes, his eyes, waiting for him. And in that instant, his entire world shifted. Adam Whitmore had never been a man who dwelled on the past. He built his life on discipline, ambition, and absolute control. He was the kind of man who looked forward, never backward, who saw regret as a weakness and emotions as distractions. But as he stepped onto the quiet, windswept cemetery grounds, he realized that some ghosts could not be ignored forever. It had been 2 years since he first learned that Rachel was gone. He hadn't gone to the funeral. He hadn't reached out to her family. When he heard the news, he had buried it under paperwork, business meetings, and late nights at the office, convincing himself that it didn't matter anymore. She had left him 6 years ago without an explanation, without a trace. She had made her choice, and he had made his, focusing on the empire he had built, the success he had achieved, and the future that no longer included her. But something had changed. Maybe it was the way her name still echoed in his mind when he least expected it. Maybe it was the unshakable feeling that there had been unfinished business between them, a question that had never been answered. Or maybe it was just guilt, the kind that settled in the bones and refused to leave. Whatever the reason, he was here now, standing in front of her gravestone, staring at the cold, carved letters of her name as the autumn wind whispered through the trees. He didn't know what he had expected to feel. Closure. Peace. Instead, all he felt was emptiness. He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his dark brown hair, his sharp blue eyes scanning the simple inscription beneath her name. There were no extravagant words, no elaborate tributes, just the bare, undeniable fact of her absence. And then he heard it. A sound so soft he almost thought he imagined it. Crying. It was faint, a quiet, muffled sob that barely carried over the breeze. He turned his head, his body tensing, his instincts sharp. He wasn't alone. Stepping around the gravestone, he saw them. 2 little girls, huddled together, their small hands clutching each other tightly. They were dressed in matching navy blue coats, their long dark brown hair braided neatly, their heads bowed as they cried. Their faces were nearly identical, their shoulders shaking, their small frames curled inward as if trying to disappear into the cold ground. He stopped in his tracks, his breath catching in his throat. They looked up at the same time, and for the first time in his life, Adam Whitmore felt the ground shift beneath him. 2 sets of piercing blue eyes, wide with unshed tears, stared back at him. His blue eyes. His world narrowed, the sounds around him fading into nothing. He had spent years negotiating billion-dollar deals, controlling boardrooms filled with the most powerful men in the world, facing crises that would have crushed lesser men. But nothing, nothing had ever prepared him for this. They were his. He didn't know how, he didn't know why, but he knew it with the same certainty that he knew his own name. His voice was rough when he finally spoke. "Who are you?" One of the girls sniffled, wiping her nose with the sleeve of her coat. "We're Lily and Leia," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He swallowed, his throat tight. "Why are you here?" The second girl, smaller, more hesitant, bit her lip before speaking. "We were waiting." His chest constricted. Waiting for what? The first girl, Lily, looked him straight in the eye, her expression both fearful and desperate. "For you." The words hit him like a blow. His pulse pounded in his ears, his body frozen as he stared at the 2 children in front of him. Rachel had left him 6 years ago. These girls were 6 years old. Everything inside him screamed for an explanation, but there was no one to give it to him. Rachel was gone. The only ones left with the answers were two little girls with his eyes, his features, his blood. His daughters. He had never even known they existed. And now, standing at their mother's grave, they were looking at him as if he were the only thing in the world that mattered. Adam's breath felt trapped in his chest as he stared at the two little girls in front of him. The wind rustled the trees around them, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves, but all he could focus on were their wide blue eyes. His blue eyes. His mind raced, trying to grasp the reality of what was happening. Rachel had been gone for 2 years. She had left him 6 years ago without an explanation. And now, standing in front of him, were 2 6-year-old girls who looked exactly like him. Lily and Leah. The names felt foreign yet familiar, like something that should have been a part of his world but had been stolen from him before he even knew they existed. He forced himself to take a slow breath, his voice quieter than usual. "Who brought you here?" Lily wiped at her face with the sleeve of her coat. "Nobody." Leah clutched her sister's arm tighter. "We came by ourselves." Adam's stomach twisted. "Where do you live?" "With Aunt Meg," Lily answered. The name meant nothing to him, and that only fueled the growing frustration in his chest. His children, his children had been raised by someone else. A stranger. And he had been completely unaware. His jaw tightened, his pulse pounding. He wasn't a man who lost control, but right now, he felt like he was grasping at something too big, too life-altering to contain. He crouched down to their level, leveling his gaze with theirs. "Does she know you're here?" Lily hesitated. Leah shook her head. "No," Leah whispered. Adam clenched his jaw. "You ran away." Lily nodded slowly, her eyes searching his face. Adam had spent his life making decisions with precision and confidence, never second-guessing himself. But at this moment, he had no idea what to do. His children had been hidden from him. Their mother had died, and he hadn't even known. And now they were here, at her grave, waiting for him like he was supposed to have found them all along. His voice was quieter when he spoke again. "Why were you waiting for me?" Leah looked down, fidgeting with the edge of her coat. "Because Mommy told us you would come one day." His breath caught. "She told you about me?" Lily nodded. "She said our daddy was very busy, but he was a good man. She said one day you would find us." Something inside Adam cracked. He felt the weight of those words settle in his chest, heavier than anything he had ever carried. Rachel had known. She had known that one day, he would be here. She had believed it enough to tell their daughters. And yet, she had never told him. His hands curled into fists at his sides as emotions warred within him. Anger. Grief. Guilt. "I should have known about you," he said, his voice low, almost to himself. Lily and Leah exchanged glances before looking back at him. "We didn't think you would really come," Leah admitted. "But we wanted to wait. Just in case." Adam swallowed hard, forcing back the lump in his throat. He wasn't the type of man who let emotions rule him, but right now, they were hitting him like a tidal wave. He straightened, glancing around the nearly empty cemetery. The air was turning colder, the sun starting to dip lower in the sky. He had wasted enough time standing here trying to process something that could never be processed in a single moment. He looked back at the two girls, at the way they clung to each other, at the way they looked at him like he was supposed to have all the answers. "Come with me," he said, his voice steady now. Leah hesitated, but Lily nodded. "Where?" Adam didn't know how to answer that. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have a single clue what came next. But he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't leaving them here. Adam drove in silence, gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The weight of what had just happened pressed against his chest, heavy and relentless. In the rearview mirror, he could see them, two little girls with dark brown hair and piercing blue eyes, sitting side by side in the back seat of his car. They were quiet, their small hands clasped together, their identical faces filled with uncertainty. He still couldn't believe they were real. That they were his. He had spent his entire life controlling every detail, every outcome, every possible risk. But this, two daughters he had never known existed, two little girls who had been waiting for him at their mother's grave, this was something he had never prepared for. He glanced at them again. They looked so small. So fragile. And yet, there was something about the way they held themselves, the way they watched him with cautious but unwavering curiosity, that made his chest ache. "Are you scared?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. Lily, the bolder of the two, shook her head. "No." Leia hesitated before nodding. "A little." Adam exhaled. He didn't blame them. They had just run away from wherever they lived, trusting a stranger they had only heard about in bedtime stories. A stranger who, until today, hadn't even known they existed. "Where are we going?" Lily asked. He hesitated. He had no answer to that. His life was structured, built on logic and forethought, but right now, he was running on pure instinct. "I need to find your aunt," he finally said. "She must be worried." Leia shifted uncomfortably. "She didn't know we were leaving." Adam's jaw tightened. "Does she take care of you?" Lily nodded. "She's nice." Leia's voice was softer. "But she's not our mom." The words hit him harder than he expected. Of course she wasn't. No one could be. But Rachel had left them in her care, and he needed to know why. He took a turn onto a quieter street and pulled into a parking lot. He wasn't about to show up at their home unannounced, not until he had more information. He needed to figure out who this Aunt Meg was, what kind of life his daughters had been living, and why no one had ever told him about them. He turned off the engine and twisted in his seat to look at them. "Do you know your aunt's phone number?" Lily shook her head. "She has a phone, but we don't." Of course they didn't. He rubbed his temple, exhaling slowly. "What about her last name?" Leia perked up. "Carter." It wasn't much, but it was something. Adam pulled out his phone and started searching. It didn't take long. Megan Carter. Legal guardian of Lily and Leia Whitmore. His last name. It was there in black and white, on documents he had never seen, decisions he had never been a part of. His stomach twisted. Rachel had known. She had known these girls were his. She had given them his name. And yet, she had kept them from him. "She lives in an apartment downtown," he murmured, more to himself than to them. Leia fidgeted with her coat. "Are you going to take us back?" He looked at her, really looked at her. She was small, her hands tucked into the sleeves of her jacket, her voice barely above a whisper. The way she asked wasn't demanding. It wasn't even fearful. It was resigned, as if she had already decided that no matter what happened, it wouldn't be up to her. "No," he said firmly. "Not yet." Lily tilted her head. "Then what happens now?" Adam didn't know. But he wasn't letting them go. Not until he had answers. Not until he knew why Rachel had kept them a secret. Not until he figured out how to be a father to two little girls who had spent their entire lives waiting for him. Adam sat in his car for a long moment, staring at the address on his phone. Megan Carter. Legal guardian of Lily and Leia Whitmore. His daughters. He still wasn't used to that word, to the weight it carried, to the way it made something in his chest tighten every time he thought about it. He glanced back at them. They were quiet, their small hands still clasped together, their matching blue eyes watching him with a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. He didn't know how to do this. He had spent his life making decisions, executing plans, and controlling every possible outcome. But there was no blueprint for this. No business strategy to follow. He had two little girls who had been waiting for him, who had grown up without him, and now he had to figure out what came next. "We're going to see your aunt," he finally said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. Leia's fingers curled into the fabric of her coat. "Will she be mad?" Adam exhaled, gripping the steering wheel. "Maybe. But she needs to know you're safe." Lily shifted in her seat. "Are you mad?" He looked at her, surprised by the question. "At you?" "No. At Mommy?" The air in the car felt heavier. He didn't know how to answer that. Was he angry? Yes. Furious, even. But anger wouldn't change the past. It wouldn't give him back the years he had lost. It wouldn't erase the fact that Rachel had kept his daughters from him, for reasons he still didn't understand. "I don't know," he admitted. Lily seemed to accept that answer. Leia, however, looked away, her small fingers twisting the hem of her coat. Adam pulled out of the parking lot and drove toward the address. It was a quiet neighborhood, older but well kept. He parked in front of a modest apartment building and turned off the engine. For a second, none of them moved. Then, before he could knock, the door to the apartment swung open. A woman stood in the doorway, her face pale, her dark eyes widening as she took in the sight in front of her. "Lily? Leia?" Her voice was sharp with panic. The girls flinched but didn't move. Adam took a slow step forward, keeping his voice calm. "You must be Megan Carter." Megan's gaze snapped to him, her breath catching. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You're Adam Whitmore." Adam felt a muscle tighten in his jaw. "That's right. And I think we need to talk." Megan didn't say anything at first. She just stared at him, as if trying to process the fact that he was real. Then her eyes flickered back to the girls, to the way they stood close to him, and something in her expression softened. "Get inside," she said, stepping aside. Adam hesitated before gently guiding Lily and Leia past her into the apartment. It was small but warm, the kind of place that felt lived in. Family pictures lined the walls, and in the corner, a pile of children's books and stuffed animals sat next to a worn-out couch. Megan closed the door behind them, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "How did you find them?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Adam turned to her. "I didn't. They found me. At Rachel's grave." Megan's face drained of color. She sank into a chair, rubbing her temples. "They ran away," she murmured. "God, I was so scared. I thought," she broke off, exhaling shakily. "I should have told you." Adam's chest tightened. "Yes. You should have." Megan looked up at him, guilt clear in her expression. "It wasn't my choice, Adam. Rachel made me promise. She was terrified that if you knew, you'd take them away." His hands curled into fists. "Why would she think that?" Megan hesitated, then met his gaze. "Because she thought you'd feel obligated to be their father, but not because you wanted to. And she didn't want them growing up with a parent who resented them." Adam felt like he had been punched. "That's not fair." "I know," Megan said softly. "But Rachel was scared. She was convinced that if you knew, you'd stay out of duty, not love." Adam ran a hand through his hair, trying to process it. Rachel had been wrong. She had decided for him, taken his choice away, stolen years of his daughters' lives from him. But what good would it do to argue with a ghost? Megan sighed. "I don't know what happens now, Adam. But I do know that those girls have spent their whole lives wondering about you. Rachel never spoke badly of you. She told them stories. She made sure they knew who you were. And when she got sick, she told them you'd come one day." Adam swallowed hard. He glanced at Lily and Leia, who were sitting quietly on the couch, watching him with the same cautious hope he had seen in their eyes at the cemetery. He turned back to Megan. I'm not going anywhere. Megan studied him for a long moment before nodding. Then let's figure this out. Together. Adam didn't know what the future looked like. But for the first time in his life, he knew exactly where he needed to be. Adam sat at the kitchen table across from Megan, his fingers curled tightly around the ceramic mug she had handed him. The warmth of the coffee barely registered. His mind was too focused, too restless, trying to process everything that had been stolen from him. Across the small living room, Lily and Leia sat on the couch, whispering to each other. They were watching him, studying him the way children did when they weren't sure what to expect. He wanted to go to them, to pull them close, to tell them that everything was going to be okay, even though he had no idea what that meant yet. Megan exhaled, setting her own mug down. She had been quiet for a long time, but now she finally looked at him, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and guilt. I know you must hate me for keeping this from you. Adam didn't answer right away. Hate was too strong of a word, but anger, deep, cutting anger, was something he couldn't deny. He had spent years believing Rachel had simply left him because she didn't love him anymore. He had convinced himself that she had walked away because she wanted a different life, one that didn't include him. But now he knew the truth. She had left because she was pregnant. Because she was afraid. And now, she was gone, leaving behind two little girls who had spent their entire lives not knowing their father. He took a slow breath before speaking. I don't hate you, Megan. But I need to understand why. Why did Rachel think I wouldn't want them? Megan's gaze flickered toward the girls before returning to him. You were always so focused on your work, Adam. Rachel saw how much your career meant to you. She thought if she told you, you'd feel obligated to stay, but you wouldn't really want to. She didn't want them growing up with a father who saw them as a burden. Adam's jaw tightened. That wasn't her choice to make. I know. Megan sighed. But Rachel, she was complicated. She loved you, but she was scared. She didn't want to trap you in a life you never planned for. Adam ran a hand down his face, trying to push back the frustration simmering beneath his skin. And what about after she got sick? Why didn't you tell me then? Megan looked away, guilt etched into her features. By the time she told me the truth, it was too late. She made me promise not to reach out to you. She thought she was protecting them. She believed you'd come when you were ready. Adam felt something inside him crack. Rachel had believed he would find them. That, eventually, he would be here. But how could she have known? How could she have been sure? He glanced back at the girls, his heart clenching. They had been waiting for him. His voice was quieter when he spoke again. What's their life been like? Megan hesitated before answering. Good. As good as it could be without their parents. I love them, Adam. I tried to give them everything they needed, but I'm not their mom. They always knew there was someone missing. Adam swallowed hard. He had missed so much. Their first steps, their first words, their birthdays, their scraped knees and bedtime stories. He couldn't get those years back, but he could make sure they never had to wonder where he was again. He looked at Megan, his voice firm. I want to be in their lives. Whatever that looks like, whatever it takes, I need them to know that I'm not going anywhere. Megan studied him for a long moment, as if trying to determine if he really meant it. Then she nodded. Okay. Adam felt something shift. A door opening. A chance. He didn't know what the future looked like, but for the first time, he knew where he belonged. Adam sat in the living room, his elbows resting on his knees, watching Lily and Leia as they played with a set of small figurines on the carpet. He had never expected to be here, in this apartment, trying to figure out how to be a father to two little girls who had spent their entire lives without him. Megan had agreed to let him visit them, to start slow, but the truth was, he had no idea what he was doing. The girls were cautious around him. They weren't scared, but they weren't completely comfortable either. They had grown up knowing his name, hearing stories about him, but that wasn't the same as knowing him. He could see it in the way Leia hesitated before answering his questions, in the way Lily studied him when she thought he wasn't looking. They were trying to figure out who he was, what kind of man their father was, and he wasn't sure what they would find. Megan had gone into the kitchen, giving them space, but Adam still felt like an outsider. He wanted to bridge the gap, but he didn't know how. He had spent his life negotiating multi-million-dollar deals, running companies, making decisions that affected thousands of people. But sitting here, trying to connect with two 6-year-olds, felt like the hardest thing he had ever done. Lily suddenly looked up at him, her blue eyes filled with curiosity. "Do you like pizza?" Adam blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Yeah, I do." Leia perked up. "What kind?" He hesitated, trying to remember the last time he had eaten pizza that wasn't delivered to his office during a late-night meeting. "Pepperoni, I guess." Lily exchanged a glance with Leia, then nodded. "That's okay." Adam raised an eyebrow. "Just okay." Leia shrugged. "Cheese is better." Adam felt a smile tug at the corner of his lips. "I'll have to try that next time." Lily tilted her head, studying him again. "Do you like dogs?" Adam nodded. "Yeah. I had one when I was younger." Leia's eyes widened. "What was his name?" "Max," he said. "He was a golden retriever." Lily seemed to consider this information carefully before nodding. "That's a good name." It was such a simple conversation, but something about it felt significant. They were testing him, piece by piece, trying to understand who he was beyond the stories they had heard. And for the first time, Adam felt like he was getting closer to them. Megan reappeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "The girls love ice cream. There's a shop down the street. Maybe you could take them." Adam looked at the girls, waiting for their reaction. Leia glanced at Lily, as if waiting for her sister to decide. Lily studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Okay." Adam felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't much, but it was something. A few minutes later, they were walking down the sidewalk, the girls on either side of him. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows, and the city buzzed around them, but all Adam could focus on was the small hand that suddenly slipped into his. "Leia." She didn't say anything, didn't even look up at him, but she didn't let go. And in that moment, Adam knew he had taken his first real step toward being their father. Adam hadn't expected that something as simple as getting ice cream could feel like such a big step. But as he walked down the sidewalk with Lily and Leia beside him, he realized that for them, and for him, this moment mattered. Leia's small hand was still wrapped around his, her grip firm but hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she was supposed to be holding on but didn't want to let go. He didn't say anything about it, didn't acknowledge it, afraid that if he did, she might pull away. Instead, he let it happen, let her decide when she was ready to trust him fully. Lily walked slightly ahead, her long dark hair swaying as she looked up at the buildings around them. She was more guarded, more watchful, always the first to speak but also the first to analyze a situation before deciding how she felt about it. Adam recognized that instinct. He had lived his life the same way, never fully trusting something until he knew it was real. He had spent his entire career reading people, knowing when they were holding something back. And right now, he could tell that Lily was still holding back. The ice cream shop was small and tucked between a bookstore and a coffee shop. The inside smelled like vanilla and sugar, the air thick with the scent of freshly made waffle cones. A few families sat at tables, kids laughing as they dug into their sundaes. Adam led the girls to the counter, scanning the menu even though he already knew what they were going to pick. The girl behind the counter smiled. "What can I get for you?" Leia looked up first. "Chocolate." Lily didn't hesitate. Cheesecake. Adam raised an eyebrow at that. Cheesecake? Lily nodded. Mommy always got cheesecake ice cream. She said it was the best. The mention of Rachel hit him harder than he expected. It wasn't sadness, not exactly, but something close to it. A reminder of everything he had missed, of the things his daughters had shared with their mother that he had never been a part of. He wondered how many other things there were, how many small habits and traditions Rachel had passed on to them that he would never fully understand. The girl behind the counter looked at him expectantly. Adam cleared his throat. "I'll have the same." Lily looked at him, surprised. "You like cheesecake ice cream?" Adam had never tried it in his life. But he looked down at her and nodded. "Guess I'll find out." She didn't say anything, just studied him for a moment before turning back to watch as their ice cream was scooped. They sat at a small table near the window, the city street just outside. Leia immediately dug into her chocolate ice cream, swinging her feet beneath her chair as she hummed softly to herself. Lily took a more careful approach, tasting her first spoonful before deciding it was acceptable. Adam did the same, and to his surprise, it was actually good. Lily watched him out of the corner of her eye. "Do you really like it, or are you just pretending?" Adam smirked. "What do you think?" Lily thought for a moment before shrugging. "I think you're trying too hard." The honesty in her words caught him off guard. He had spent his entire life in control, knowing exactly what to say and how to say it. But with these girls, there was no strategy, no calculated approach. They saw right through him. And maybe that was a good thing. "I probably am," he admitted. "But I want to get to know you. Both of you." Leia looked up at that, chocolate smeared at the corner of her mouth. "Why?" Adam set his spoon down, meeting her gaze. "Because I'm your dad." The words felt strange on his tongue. He had spent weeks processing that fact, but saying it out loud made it feel even more real. Leia tilted her head, considering his answer. "Mommy said you were really busy." Adam exhaled. "I was. But I'm here now." Lily was still watching him closely. "For how long?" The question hit him in a way he hadn't expected. They didn't just need him to be present now. They needed to know he was staying. That he wasn't going to disappear the way he had, unknowingly, the first time. He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. "I'm not going anywhere." Lily stared at him for a long moment before nodding. It wasn't full trust, not yet, but it was something. They finished their ice cream, and as they walked back to Megan's apartment, Leia reached for his hand again. This time, Lily did too. Adam looked down at them, at the two little girls who had been waiting their whole lives for him, and for the first time in as long as he could remember, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. Adam had always thought that family was something other people had. It wasn't that he had actively avoided the idea, but his life had never allowed space for it. His career had consumed him, his ambitions had driven him, and for years, he had convinced himself that was enough. But now, sitting in Megan's apartment with Lily and Leia curled up beside him on the couch, their sleepy eyes barely open as they watched an old animated movie, he realized that everything he had once believed about his life had been wrong. It had been weeks since he had found them at Rachel's grave. Weeks of learning their routines, of understanding their small habits, of figuring out what made them laugh and what made them hesitate. He had learned that Leia hated thunderstorms and always needed a nightlight. He had learned that Lily was fiercely independent but still needed to be reassured that she was safe. He had learned that they both loved pancakes but only if they had extra syrup, and that they refused to go to bed without saying goodnight to each other first. Megan had given him more time with them, allowing him to take them out for entire afternoons, then full days. He had been cautious, making sure they never felt forced into anything, but they had accepted him faster than he had expected. At first, they had called him Adam, their voices careful, testing the weight of his name. But then one evening, as he had helped Leia tie her shoes before heading home, she had mumbled something so soft he almost didn't catch it. "See you tomorrow, Daddy." It had stunned him. He had looked at her, waiting for her to take it back, to correct herself. But she hadn't. She had simply smiled, grabbed Lily's hand, and walked toward Megan's door without hesitation. And now, sitting here with them half asleep beside him, he knew there was no going back. They were his. Not just by blood, not just by obligation, but in a way that went deeper than he had ever expected. Lily shifted slightly, resting her head against his arm. "Are you staying tonight?" Adam glanced at Megan, who was sitting across the room, watching them with a knowing look. He had spent so much of his life planning every move, thinking 10 steps ahead. But right now, the only thing that mattered was them. "Do you want me to?" he asked. Lily nodded sleepily. "Yeah." Leigh yawned, curling into his side. "Can we have pancakes in the morning?" Adam felt something warm settle in his chest. "Extra syrup?" Leia smiled. "Always." Megan stood, stretching. "You can stay in the guest room," she said. "I'll grab you some blankets." Adam nodded, watching as she disappeared down the hall. He looked back at the girls, at the way they had so easily accepted him into their world, and he felt something shift inside him. He had spent his life building an empire, chasing success, proving himself to everyone who had ever doubted him. But none of it had ever felt as important as this moment. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to each of their heads. "Good night, girls." Lily murmured something incoherent, already halfway asleep. Leia's fingers curled around the sleeve of his shirt. "Good night, Daddy." The word still sent a jolt through him, but it no longer felt foreign. It felt right. As he sat there, listening to the soft sound of their breathing, he realized that for the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about work, or success, or the future. He was here, fully present, exactly where he was meant to be. And he wasn't going anywhere. The ending of this story isn't just about resolution, it's about transformation. Adam starts as a man who defines himself by his success, by his control over every aspect of his life. He is someone who never accounted for love, for family, for the unpredictable emotions that come with truly belonging to someone. But by the time the story reaches its conclusion, he has changed in a way that is both profound and deeply personal. What makes this ending powerful is that it isn't about a grand, dramatic moment. There's no sudden, overwhelming realization. Instead, it's built on quiet, intimate choices, the way Lily leans against him without hesitation, the way Leia casually calls him Daddy, as if she's always known he was meant to be in their lives. These moments aren't loud, but they are life-changing. Adam's final decision to stay, to embrace the role he never knew he was missing, is what makes the story truly satisfying. He doesn't just promise to be there, he follows through. He chooses his daughters, not out of obligation, but out of love. And that love, which was once foreign to him, now feels like the most natural thing in the world. This isn't just a story about discovering lost children. It's about redemption, about making up for lost time in the only way that matters, by being present. It's about healing wounds that were never spoken aloud, about trust that isn't given instantly but is built through everyday moments. And most importantly, it's about the realization that love isn't something that weakens a man like Adam Whitmore. It's what finally makes him whole.